And so if we're going to talk about, class issues, let's talk about them. Let's talk about the class issues that are facing, many people who are part of this community. As the only queer person on RBN, I feel it's my duty to talk about these things, to talk about the intersection of gender identity, sexual orientation, and class. It's not going to be popular. In fact, half the people probably in the chat probably hate my guts right now. You probably do. You probably think that this topic is completely unnecessary. But as somebody that's a socialist, damn near communist, I feel this deeply important. And by the way, this subject is constantly co-opted by Democrats and liberals. Constantly co-opted without actually caring for us. They don't care about us. Just like black people know that the Democrats and the liberals don't care about us, guess what? They don't care about us queer people either. And when I talk about them, I'm not talking about the, just the average voter. I'm talking about the people at the top. I'm talking about the people like the Nancy Pelosi's and the Hakeem Jeffries and the Chuck Schumers. That's what I'm talking about. They really don't care. They may say that they care, but when it comes to their actual policies, they don't care. Right? And it goes all the way up to people like Joe Biden. Joe Biden don't care. And I think that is something that, it's kind of like duh. But yeah, Joe Biden doesn't care. And he will never care. And he'll say, love is love. And you guys shouldn't be discriminated against. You guys shouldn't be, discriminated against just because of who you love. Joe Biden doesn't really believe that. And some people will go, well, he's evolved over the years. A leopard doesn't change his spots. Not this leopard. No. Here he was back in 2006 on Meet the Press.
Yesterday and tomorrow in the Rose Garden to talk about a constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage.
Think about this. The world's going to Hades in a handbasket. We are desperately concerned about the circumstance relating to avian flu. We don't have enough vaccines. We don't have enough police officers. And we're going to debate the next 3 weeks, I'm told, gay marriage, a flag amendment, and God only knows what else. I can't believe the American people can't see through this. We already have a law, the Defense of Marriage Act, where we've all voted, not where I voted and others said, look, marriage is between a man and a woman, and states must respect that. Nobody's violated that law. There's been no challenge to that law. Why do we need a constitutional amendment? Marriage is between a man and a woman. What's the game going on here?
So that's Joe Biden. So, yeah, we have to be very careful because there are people who are disenfranchised in this country. And if we're making them out to be the enemy, who are just trying to live their lives, who are we taking sides with? Got to ask that question. We got to be careful. There is a article that I also want to show you guys. This calls Law Enforcement Violence Against Women of Color, Against Trans People of Color, a critical intersection of gender violence and state violence. Because a lot of people will go up against, especially Black trans women, which they get a lot of heat. This is a great resource here, by the way. It goes first under policing gender. It says law enforcement agencies not only enforce systemic power relations based on race and class through racial profiling, race-based policing, and targeting of low-income communities of color, they also police gender lines, enforcing dominant racialized gender norms. Yet, the gendered aspects and manifestations of law enforcement violence are often invisible in organizing and advocacy around both police brutality and gender-based violence. As sometimes police enforcement of the gender binary. The idea that there are only two genders, male and female, each of which is characterized by specific conduct and appearance, is obvious. For instance, until just a few decades ago, cops used to enforce what are known as sumptuary laws, which require individuals to wear gender-appropriate clothing and subject to people to arrest for impersonating another gender. Today, such regulations remain in effect in prisons and are enforced through disciplinary infractions and punitive segregation. These regulations still inform law enforcement conduct. For instance, New York City Police Department's current arrest paperwork still has a box check for impersonating a female. Additionally, requests for identification, which may not match a person's gender identity, often lead to police presumptions that transgender people are fraudulent, deceitful, or inherently suspicious. This can in turn lead to verbal abuse, harassment, and physical abuse. Law enforcement officers also regularly subject trans and gender nonconforming people to invasive and abusive searches to satisfy their curiosity, humiliate, or to involuntarily assign a gender based on genital status. And these two blurbs says, an African-American transgender woman arrested by LAPD, taken to the county jail, reported, quote, the officers wanted to see my chest. They wanted to see if I had breasts or not, end quote. They reportedly came into her cell and instructed her to remove her shirt. After she complied, they left. Next one says a transgender man was arrested during the political protest in San Francisco. He showed the officers the driver's license that identified him as legally male and was placed in a holding pen with other male detainees. The officers got curious about the activist's gender status, came to the cell, and reportedly pushed him around, dragged him out, and belligerently accused him of having a fraudulent identification card. A second officer asked him if he had a penis and groped his crotch and chest to verify his gender. So this is what police do. And this is why, we really need to, rethink public safety, because police do not do anything but harass people, especially, people who are just workers within this capitalist system. Let's talk about housing, right? Housing also is a big thing that we really need to talk about. This is out of the Trevor Project. It says homelessness and housing instability among LGBTQ youth. It says 28% of LGBTQ youth reported experiencing homelessness or housing instability at some point in their lives. And those who did had 2 or 4 times the odds of reporting depression, anxiety, self-harm, considering suicide, and attempting suicide compared to those with stable housing. So it says LGBTQ youth are overrepresented among young people experiencing homelessness and housing instability in the United States. This elevated risk of homelessness and housing instability has detrimental effects on LGBTQ youth mental health. So if we're going to talk about housing for all, these are some of the people that would actually benefit from housing for all. It's a class issue. It keeps going back to that. When we talk about people who are being discriminated against at work, it's an employee issue. Like, look, if you're constantly being discriminated at work for you being just who you are, then guess what? It becomes a class issue.